Hey everyone, this is Katie Sweetman with Empowering Astrology, and this is another live look at the astrology of October 12th through 18th, 2020. I had to think about it for a second. So I am here in Brooklyn, New York, and we have been getting together every week to look at the astrology, to understand what is it that we're dealing with? Why do I feel so strange? What's going on in the world? What's going on in my life? Because, and I say this over and over again, the astrology is just 50% of things. You are the other 50%. So we use our time together weekly and even daily as we check in with the astrology and the updates that I write on Facebook, on my website, Empowering Astrology. How do we best work with this time? How do we get our human self in alignment with the astrology? How do we react, make choices, and step up to what the astrology is asking of us? And sometimes the astrology asks a lot of us. Sometimes the astrology asks that we be a better person, that we take responsibilities more seriously, that we tear down something that's not working and maybe rebuild something very new in its place. And certainly 2020 has been quite the year. It's been a year that has brought forward many things that were seeded back in 2008. And this is something that I've been talking about at various points throughout week to week, certainly with clients. I say to people, like, where were you in 2008? And I know most people are like, why is she asking me about 12 years ago? But here's the thing about astrology is that it really makes sense in hindsight. And what we experience is not these one-off day-to-day things. We are experiencing different moments in a much bigger story or a much bigger structure. So it's good to go back and check in, like, where were we when this story or when the seed was planted? So, go back in yourselves and think, where was life in 2008? Who were you? Where were you? Who were you with? What was your work? And I know that 2008, 2009 was a difficult year, or at least commenced a difficult time for a lot of people, but it planted a seed. So 2020, here we are, 12 years later, and this year has been about how do we pull together a lot of the big changes that we've been making in the last 12 years. How do we concretize, if that's even a word? How do we make solid? How do we rebuild what needs to be rebuilt? And I think 2020 was a big check-in for a lot of us. Like, what's still not in alignment with where we need to go? So this has been, it's been a very challenging year. And why am I bringing this up? Well, as we speak, couple of things. Number one, Saturn's got 2 more months left in Capricorn, and Saturn throughout the year, minus, let's say, March to July, when Saturn dipped into Aquarius, this has been this year where we've really had to check in on a lot of the big work, big psychic work, emotional work, spiritual work, structural work that we've been doing over the last 12 years. Saturn's been saying to every one of us, show me the receipts. Show me what you've been doing. Saturn is the planet of accountability, especially when it's in Capricorn. And certainly when Saturn is in Capricorn, the bar is set very high for us individually. So this is sort of where we all have been collectively. And now that as Saturn gets to the last 2 months of its time in Capricorn, not to return for another 30 years, that's why it's a big deal, Saturn is kind of doing that last big push with each and every one of us. Show me what you got. Show me what decisions you're making. Show me what responsibilities you're taking on. Show me what you're building. Show me what all of this work has all brought together. So we certainly have some big work to do in the next couple of months. Sometimes, Saturn does reward. I mean, we can't forget that. We get the little pat on the back, we get the promotion, we get the recognition for all of our hard work, because Saturn loves hard work. It's kind of this process of maturity that we've all been going through. It's just been a very difficult time because unfortunately Saturn also coincides with times that are not super easy. So the other thing is that this week the Sun in Libra is now starting to get to the last, what we would say in astrology, the last 10 degrees of Libra. And as it does so, it's going to make a square to Pluto. It's going to make a square to Saturn. In addition, the new moon, there's going to be a new moon on October 16th, on Thursday, October 16th. That new moon, it squares Saturn and Pluto. So that tells us that the coming lunar months, so the coming 4 weeks after October 16th, are really seeded with these energies of Saturn and Pluto. Think back to January when Saturn and Pluto came together in their historic conjunction. They hadn't been together in the sky since 1982. They were together in Libra back in 1982. If you're a history buff like me, the last time they were together in Capricorn, like they were in January, was, I believe, 1518, a long time ago. 1518, I'm getting a little historical side note. It was the start, and certainly this is from a Western historical perspective, it was the start of a lot of massive changes. It was, not too long after the Protestant Reformation, a lot of big shifts in the power structures of Europe at that time. I unfortunately know about that part of the world, so I'm sure there's very interesting things going on in other parts of the world beyond Europe, of course, but it was the time of a lot of big structural changes. Never mind, that was a little side historical note. But here we are, 500 years later, and Saturn and Pluto are together again in the sky in Capricorn. This is why at the very beginning of this year, I was like, look, guys, I'm going to call this the wrecking ball because it's bringing down old structures and it's clearing a path so we can build something very new. Pluto, God bless it, Pluto shows us what's not working. It sort of pulls things out of the pipes, or it shows us, the structures, or it shows us the foundation. Hey, look, this has got a crack in it. Or hey, look, this is rotten. We can't build with this. So Pluto's been really exposing things this year, personally, collectively, the things that just aren't working. They have to be addressed. They have to be healed. They have to be transformed. And so we've kind of been seeing that throughout the year. Certainly, if you look back to where you were in January, maybe it's the relationship that was there at the beginning of January isn't there, or the job, or you were living someplace very different, or something, or maybe it's even internal and psychic, because Pluto is showing you what's just not working. So as we go into this week, it's like this last time that we're going to have what's called a lunation, like a new moon or a full moon that's really activating Saturn and Pluto, because by the time the sun and the moon, we have a Capricorn new moon at the end of this year, Saturn will be in Aquarius. Jupiter will be in Aquarius too. So we don't have this sort of pile up of planets going on in Capricorn like we are now. So I want us all to think about this week, and I want to think us all to think about this new moon. It's like, how is this a new moon that's really bringing together a lot of these different threads from January, threads from different points throughout 2020, threads from 2018, threads from 2008, threads from 1518. I'm joking, we'll just focus on this Saturn-Pluto cycle. So this is when we are sort of like, we've cleared space this year. What are we building? It's got to be something very different. The other thing is that we're in Libra season. Libra season is inherently about relationships, not just romantic relationship, but really it's the sign of socialization. How do we connect with one another? What are our relationship structures? What are the things that we build connection upon? Does something need to greatly shift? And how you connect with people, your own relationships, all your relationships, even romantic partnerships. It's something to keep in mind that as we're sort of navigating some big deal astrology. But we'll put a little quick bookmark in that and come back in a moment. And then we'll just start with the astrology of this week. Monday, as I record this, October 12th, 2020, Jupiter and Neptune. They've been in and out of what's called a sextile all year long. There was a sextile, I believe it was in February. Again, I can't remember the second date of the sextile, but this is the last of the sextiles. Sextiles in astrology are really quiet. they're more times than none, they're not really worth mentioning. The sextile in astrology is like, oh, something kind of worked out, and, kind of greases the wheels. It puts puts a chocolate on your pillow. It turns things down. At the end of the day, it's a little invisible, but they're sort of call them the concierge of astrology. That said, Jupiter and Neptune, they are what are called outer planets, so they sort of deal with life on a bigger level. Jupiter, faith, truth, meaning, wisdom, our belief in the world, our belief in ourselves in the world. Like, how do we make sense of all the crazy things that are going on? Neptune, this planet that just dissolves the boundary between this physical world that we are all sitting in and the non-physical world that is beyond this. So the sextile means that there have been points throughout this year where I think I'm calling it the silver lining. I think that, and I can only speak for myself, of course I've seen this and other, my clients, it's the silver lining in everything that's been going on in our personal lives this year. Yes, 2020 has demanded a lot from us, and we have maybe seen a lot of really profound changes, and changes that may have been very difficult or even painful. What's the silver lining? There's probably a silver lining somewhere. We've all had to make massive changes, but maybe these are changes that were necessary, and maybe now that certain excuses or certain situations are taken away, we can step into something that we've been afraid to step into, or go towards something that we haven't been able to go towards before. So Jupiter sextile Neptune is maybe like a little divinely guided hand. It's a helping hand. It's a little miraculous, but it's in such a quiet way, as sextiles are wont to do. So maybe you're seeing something kind of quietly in the background work out. Maybe you're like, oh, silver lining. There's the silver lining in all the craziness of 2020. So it's just something to keep in mind. I mean, Jupiter is not now direct, I think it turned direct in September, but it's going to, get out of Capricorn by December. So it's going to start, trucking along, and it's not going to be in the sextile for much longer. So just something to keep in mind. Maybe this is a day when we hope and we wish and we pray, and maybe we feel something. Maybe we do get our answers, our prayers heard. Also this week, other big news, on the 13th of October, Mercury turns retrograde at 11 degrees of Scorpio. So Mercury is spending the better part of 2 months in Scorpio, minus a little dip back into Libra. Right now, it's sort of what's called dancing in an opposition to Uranus. So Mercury in Scorpio is the classic investigator. It needs to get to the bottom of a mystery. If you have Mercury in Scorpio, maybe you know that you can get a bit obsessive about information. It's like once you sort of, get your claws into something, you have to kind of keep digging until you get to the bottom of something. It's a time to really obsess about the details. It's a time to really get granular about the details. With Mercury in opposition to Uranus, the information that we are coming across right now, the ideas that we are having, the conversations that we're having may challenge, may illuminate, may awaken, may shake you awake, may help you see things from a very different perspective, and perhaps in a way that feels a bit chaotic. Maybe you receive information that is completely out of the blue. Maybe you meet somebody completely out of the blue. Mercury retrograde is not a bad thing. Like all planets minus the sun and the moon, all planets go retrograde. So this is a time when we have to go back and sort of rewind things. We have to rewind things going back to September. We have to take a second look at the choices that we're making, the words that we're using, the ideas that we're really attached to. Because when Mercury goes retrograde, we have to look at things from a different perspective. We have to speak differently. We have to use our words, our minds, our ideas in a way that has a different consciousness. It's more reflective. Retrogrades are karmic. It's a time when we sort of reap what we have been doing or choosing. And so maybe we kind of, the curtain gets pulled back a little bit over the next few weeks. Maybe we see things what we have not been seeing. Maybe with the opposition to Uranus, it really sort of challenges us, or it kind of gives us a little bit of a shock, or there's something unexpected. It's not a bad thing, but we have to see things from a new perspective. Mercury opposite Uranus. So Mercury will be retrograde until November 3rd, interesting enough. So we are sort of all collectively walking back on things. Mercury goes into Libra at the end of the month. It's spent some time square Saturn, so beginning of November should be very interesting. And then at the same time, we have Sun opposite Mars on October 13th. So as the Sun gets into like the last 10 degrees of Libra, it's going to oppose Mars. Mars is in Aries. Mars is retrograde in Aries. Sun opposite Mars is very classic for being a bit confrontational. It's a bit aggressive. It can be dynamic. It can be initiative. It can inspire a lot of bravery and courage. But it's probably going to be a very, very interesting interesting day tomorrow, and maybe we're already feeling that. Maybe we're feeling kind of that kind of punchiness, the pushiness of Sun opposite Mars, and maybe we're seeing this in our relationships because Mars is in Libra's relationship sign of Aries. So if you're having some disagreements with a partner or a friend, or feathers are a little ruffled at the moment, just keep this in mind. How do you smooth things over? How do you negotiate? How do you understand things from the perspective of somebody else? Maybe with Mercury retrograde on top of this, we need to see a relationship differently, communicate with a partner or a friend differently, and do it in a way that might be radically differently than how we would normally communicate or problem solve or negotiate in the past. Further into this week, Sun squares Pluto. So now after the Sun opposes Mars, it then squares Pluto in Capricorn. So Sun square Pluto tends to be a bit of a power day. There's a sense of power dynamics, who has power, who doesn't have power. We're really feeling the push to transform, to reform. I tell people, if you aren't the power, or if you're not Pluto, then somebody else will gladly be the power for you, or gladly be Pluto for you. Meaning, it's a day when we really have to stand up for ourselves. We really have to own our power, Sun square Pluto. And by doing so, it really does transform perhaps an old dynamic in relationships. So something to keep in mind. But all of this leads us up to the new moon in Libra on October 16th. So a new moon in Libra is saying that over the coming 4 weeks, we are sort of living life through the archetype, through the lens of Libra. Libra, relationships, connection, partnership, negotiation, consensus, compromise. How do we find solutions that are for everybody, that create a sense of balance, that create a sense of harmony? Libra is also aesthetic and beauty, design. Libra is ruled by Venus. So these are also themes that may be very woven into the coming 4 weeks. New moons are new beginnings. Because Libra is about relationship, there might be a sense of new connections, new partnership, new alliances, new relationships as we go into the coming 4 weeks. Now, here's the thing. Number one, the new moon, as I was saying earlier in our time together, the new moon squares Pluto. It squares Saturn by it's a bit wide. It also squares Jupiter. So it's sort of making these connections to these 3 planets in Capricorn, and these 3 planets that have sort of shown the tectonic plates shifting and moving throughout 2020. So this is no ordinary Libra new moon. This is no, so there's a nicety to Libra. There's a need to sort of maybe not talk about the things that would confront or confound or to ruffle feathers. Libra is about social graces. So we're sort of having to navigate the intensities of this year and the intensities of life, but trying to keep things, everything chill. Libra likes things chill. So this is something that we're navigating, So it says that the things that we are going through over the next 4 weeks might be a little challenging, might be a little Plutonian, might be a little Saturnian. Saturn wants structure, it wants commitment, it wants accountability, it wants equity, balance, and partnership. This is a little bit of an intermediate astrology point, and this is more for my students, but Saturn is exalted in Libra. Saturn does its best work in Libra, which means Saturn wants connection, Saturn wants relationship, Saturn wants negotiation and compromise. So these are things that we have to be very aware of over the next 4 weeks. How do we negotiate? How do we compromise? That's what Saturn wants. It wants us to honor our obligations and honor our responsibilities. It wants us to stick to the plan, to set boundaries, to follow the rules, all these good things that Saturn wants. The square to Pluto means that whatever we are navigating, whatever we are doing sort of is on the back of some of the bigger titanic moves that we've been experiencing in 2020. How do we create something new at the same time? We're building on space, we're occupying space that's seen a lot of, let's say, demolition in 2020. So it's kind of an intense new moon. So let's just quickly go around the zodiac so you know where this new moon is activating. So for my Aries and Aries rising people, this new moon is activating your relationship sign of Libra. So the coming 4 weeks are really giving you a new opportunity, a sense of renewal, a sense of turning the page in all things relationships. Now, if you are currently in a committed relationship, then it's a new time. It's a new, turning the page. If you're going into this time and things are a little rocky, this new moon might force some bigger issues. With the square to Saturn, with the square to Pluto, this sort of picks on some bigger, things that you've been navigating in 2020, career, which way are you headed? These kind of bigger, like, what's my place in the world? What does this all mean? So how do you navigate? How do you negotiate? How do you find partnership in a time when, in a year that's really demanding a lot from you? I didn't mention this, but Venus, the ruler of the new moon, is going to be what's called making opposition to Neptune. For all of us, when you see an opposition to Neptune, we're reminded that we're not in control. You can't do ego, you can't do I want, it's going to be this, it's going to happen when there's an opposition to Neptune. Neptune talks about the forces that are bigger than us, spiritual forces, destiny, a sense of, and sacrifice is kind of a big word, but, like, how do we realize that, we can't always get what we want, but how do we sort of open ourselves up to something better, to something greater? I mean, sometimes we get very much in our blinders about what we think the way things have to be. When Neptune's involved, we have to sort of open ourselves up that maybe there's something better than we can possibly imagine. But we have to surrender to it. We have to open to it. We have to connect to some level of spirituality, divinity, whatever you want to call it, when we have that Neptune opposition. So that said, maybe there's a sense for Aries rising. Like, how do you surrender to the bigger plan? How do you surrender to something that may feel very out of your control? So something to keep in mind. Aries. Taurus. So Libra is your sign of, I have to quickly check the astrology map. That's right, Taurus, Scorpio. Okay. So for Taurus, it's going to go the other way. It's going to go backwards. Taurus, this Libra new moon is all about health, wellness, how you take care of your body, diet, fitness, nutrition, creating a sense of order and balance and harmony in your day-to-day life. It's about the schedule that you have. It's about sort of the daily flow of your life. And so this new moon is very much turning you towards all these things. Now, of course, you have all these kind of heavy aspects to Saturn and Pluto. Taurus, you've been in a time where it has been about answering these bigger questions of faith and meaning and where is this all headed? Where is this all going? So as you sort of get your human life in order, how does it align with some kind of these deeper philosophical questions that you've been trying to answer for the last 2 years, if not longer? How do you need to shift your beliefs around health? How do you, for instance, with Venus is your planet Taurus, Venus is opposite Neptune, like how do you surrender? How do you let go of any sense of expectation? How do you connect with your spiritual life? How do you get your human life and your spiritual life on the same page to find balance? How do you open up your eyes and maybe how you have organized your day or how you have done work or how you have taken care of your body or how you valued yourself has been at the detriment of some very, well-held beliefs that maybe need to go. Saturn is sort of wrapping up its time in what's called your 9th house. Gemini. So this is the part of your chart that talks about, how do you express who you are? How do you take your talents seriously, take yourself seriously? How do you have fun? How do you bring passion in your life? It sounds like a nice new moon. This is also to keep in mind, Gemini, that you've been in some really heavy-duty astrology. You've been in some heavy-duty astrology since the start of 2018. This has probably made you question a lot of things and, quite frankly, been through the emotional ringer. And there are times in life where we have to, I know it sounds sadistic, I'm a Scorpio, but we have to go through the emotional ringer. It's just a necessary step in our process, our process of evolution, our process of being here in this life. Meanwhile, you got a new moon in the part of your chart that talks about having fun. So after everything you've been through, Gemini, it's quite possible that you've been through a lot. How do you bring back that spark of life? How do you bring that spark of self? How do you bring back joy, creativity, passion, self-expression? So yes, this new moon is asking you to find some fun, but how does that then, kind of fuel you, re-nourish you as you come to the last 2 months of probably some of the most difficult past 2 years? Maybe you've had other years that have been more difficult or as difficult, but I think, with Gemini going through Saturn in the 8th, that this has probably been a very challenging last 2 years, Gemini, or last 3 years at this point. Cancer. So this new moon is about home and family. Where do you live? Where do you plant down roots? Your living situation, the people in your home, the people who are like family. And this new moon opens up a lunar month that is a natural time for you to make a move, for you to go someplace else, plant, new roots down to, it doesn't have to necessarily be a big move, but it's also a time when you also need to reconnect with your family. So maybe your family is in your life or the people who are like family. With Saturn in your relationship sign and Pluto as well, relationships have been a bit of an area for you, Cancer. So this home environment is sort of rubbing up against, so to speak, with relationships. And even if you are single, like how do you do a lot of, and if you want partnership, of course, how do you shift a lot of things in your roots so that you can open up space, that you can really start to get the idea of what Saturn's been trying to teach you over the last 3 years, Cancer. That said, this is a time when you really need to get your emotional needs met. You need to kind of water the roots of your life over the next 4 weeks, but it's sort of hitting on some very intense astrology. After Cancer, Leo. So Leo, this is the part of your chart that talks about information, ideas, learning, trips, travel. Your voice communication. So this is a new moon that might usher in a very busy 4 weeks. Maybe there's a lot of movement, a lot of conversation, a lot of chit chat, a lot of phone calls. Libra being a very social sign, maybe you're kind of jaunting off a little bit here and there. It might be a new moon when you're naturally taking classes, you're opening up books, you're kind of exercising your mind. With Saturn and Pluto, or at least Saturn, wrapping up its time in your sign of health and wellness and how you take care of yourself and the choices that you make around how you take care of your body, how you occupy your body. This is a new moon that does speak to choices. What are your choices? What are the choices that you're making going forward? Do you need to make some serious choices, some new choices? And maybe the choices that you're making with Venus opposite Neptune, this is more of a choice of surrendering into something as opposed to feeling like that you are the complete boss of something. So the busy month, one that talks about your health, one that talks about your mind, but how do you see things from a different perspective? How do you, as you start to wrap up this bigger time with Saturn and Capricorn, how do you take care of your body very differently? After Leo is Virgo. So Virgo, Libra is your sign of money, income, spending, how you earn a living, what you value, your material needs. So this is a new moon that's a very natural time for you to focus on your spending, to focus on all the kind of ancillary bank accounts and looking at budgets, and also buying the things that you need to, in order to kind of create the material life or the material stability that you need. So you might be spending more. You might be at least more focused on your material needs. There's a sense of value, what you value, the value of yourself. With Saturn and Pluto in the part of your chart that talks about taking yourself seriously, taking your talents seriously, this does kind of bring back to do you value your talents? Do you value yourself? Do you value what you have to contribute to this world? Do you take yourself seriously? Because if you don't, is it because you don't value yourself? Maybe it's a new moon where there's an opportunity for you to earn a living or to make some money through your creative talents. And this could be this new moon that, after all your hard work over the last few years, we answer a very simple question of, are you taking yourself and your talents seriously? This is a new moon where you actually start to do it. Hopefully. Scorpio. So this new moon I totally skipped over Libra. Sorry about that. So Libra, happy birthday, Libra. It's almost the end of your birthday month, and if your birthday is on, plus or minus a few days, so if your birthday is on the 16th of October, plus or minus a couple of days, a new moon on your birthday means that the coming year is a time of new beginnings. And because this new moon makes some moves to Mars and Saturn and Pluto, maybe the coming year is going to be a big year for you, Libra. That said, for the rest of the Libras, this is a new moon that's sort of your personal reset for the year. It's like a personal new beginning, or a personal new year. I know you already probably had your birthday. So this is a sense of new beginnings, all eyes are on you. You've just had this birthday season. You're preparing for the next 12 months. What are your new initiatives? This new moon sets you on a new course. Now, Libra, Saturn and Pluto and Jupiter too, have been at the bottom of your chart. So this new moon is sort of talking about new beginnings, new initiatives, but then these bigger questions of home, family. Where are you living? Who is your family? Where are you putting down roots? So you might see a lot of personal events in the next 4 weeks. These personal events that both are a culmination of all the work that you've been doing since the beginning of 2018, if not 2008, but also some of the things that have been happening, especially throughout 2020 in home, in family, in your living situation. Because Saturn has been asking Libra, like, where are you living? Where's home? So if that's something that you're trying to figure out, this is next 2 months are really starting to bring this all together. So Libra, it's a new moon for you to write out your wishes for the coming year. Now, Scorpio. So Libra makes what's called, it forms the end of your chart. Libra is your 12th sign. So this is the new moon that happens right before your birthday. So you've lived all the previous 11 months. Certainly the last 11 months have been very interesting. And this is a time to go within, to reflect, to get quiet, to meditate, to dream, to rest. And Scorpio, don't forget, your planet, Mars, is retrograde right now. You can't move forward completely as fast as you'd like. So it kind of adds another layer to this time of pulling within, reflecting, that you need to kind of rest. So yeah, Scorpio, rest, meditate, dream. So how do you get quiet? This part of the chart also talks about spirituality, working on your spiritual connections. Also talks about recuperation. Maybe you need to recuperate. 2020 has been an interesting year. With Saturn and Pluto in what's called your sign of communication, reading, learning, listening, speaking, choices, this does talk about the link, your own intuitive link, your own sense of internal GPS, your relationship with spirituality, God, source, creator, whatever you want to call it. So this is a time to get really realigned with yourself and realigned with this sharper sense of communication and a sharper sense of voice and listening to yourself that perhaps you've been making more strong in the last couple of years. Sagittarius. So this is the part of the chart that talks about friends, community, connection, like social connection, social circle. It's also a new moon that points you towards the future, meaning you're looking outward towards your future, looking outward towards the next coming year. It's helping you to prepare for your own kind of birthday season, this own sense of kind of new time as you go into the end of 2020. So this coming 4 weeks is really attuning you and turning you towards your friendships. Maybe there's something that you really need to take care of with your friendships. Maybe you need more friendships, you need more community. So this new moon is giving you an opportunity to reach out, to make connections with the different groups, different allies and alliances and organizations, different communities. So with Saturn and Pluto in your money sign of Capricorn, that's where a lot of this work that you've been doing over the past couple of years, if not the past 12 years, is on money, is on how you earn it, how you spend it, your sense of value, the value of your time, the value of yourself, the value of what you do. So maybe this is where, how do you align your future with all the work that you've been doing on your material life for the last few years? How do the friends in your life value who you are and value what you do and value what you bring? So that's Sagittarius. Capricorn, you have, like Gemini, been in a kind of a tough spot. I think 2018, 2019, 2020. The silver lining of this time is that you've really had to refashion yourself, remake yourself, transform yourself into something even better. At least we can have faith and trust and hope. So this new moon talks about career. So this would be a natural time for you to look towards getting, new work or a new position. The new moon can bring a sense of people, the public is seeing you, the people are seeing your professional life. It's a very visible new moon because Libra forms the highest point in your chart. So this new moon is a time when if you need to get noticed over something or get recognition for your hard work, this is your new moon. With Saturn and Pluto and Capricorn, there's a sense of you've been having to really total transforming who you are. So maybe this is a new moon that's really giving all that personal work some recognition, or maybe it's a time when because you've been making so much change or transformation in who you are, Capricorn, that now your work, your career, your sense of direction, your professional life now has to align with that. Maybe this is the new moon that after, the intensities of 2020, this is a new moon where all kind of needs to start to come together. Aquarius. So this is the part of your chart that talks about faith, truth, meaning, wisdom. How do you see the world? What do you believe in? What's your philosophy? Higher education, travel? It's usually long distance travel. It's usually foreign travel if that's something you can do right now. So this is a new moon that's really turning a new leaf and turning a page and kind of getting you to look at the world at large and your place in it, and really figuring out what you believe in. So this next 4 weeks may be very philosophical. They may touch on what you believe in, sometimes for better or for worse. With Saturn and Pluto in what's called your 12th sign, this is a new moon where you really have to look at what are your unconscious biases, what are you not seeing, what's sort of in your blind spots, but also this very interesting mix between what we know to be true because we read it in a book, or we are taught it, or the world says that it's so, or religion says that it's so, versus what do we know to be true because we feel it, because we have an experience that there's no way we can quantify it because it's felt, it's not, learned in a book. So there's this sort of push-pull, this friction that's happening between the things that we know objectively to be true versus the things that we know subjectively to be true. So this is for Aquarius. Pisces, last but not least, this is the part of your chart that is really shedding some light on the deepest parts of yourself, your deepest material. This is what's called your 8th sign. And when we have a new moon in the 8th sign, it says that the coming 4 weeks are the time when we have to go deep within. It's sort of the descent into our own personal shadow work, our own personal psyche, our underworld. And so we sort of experience things that press on themes around intimacy, vulnerability, safety, security, trust, secrets, the things that you only tell a lover or somebody who is very close to you. You're kind of digging around in your psyche over the next 4 weeks, with Saturn and Pluto sort of wrapping up their time in your chart. That is about, is it voice? I'm totally blanking on come back to it. This is the problem, when you're dancing with the astrology and suddenly you have to kind of go backwards and then, doing the things in your head. But, Pisces, this is a time when you have to really, look at yourself, look at who you are. Capricorn is your sign of it's not communication, it's the friends that you have, it's the people that you ally yourself with, it's the community, it's the group, it's the future. And maybe there's a need to have different friendships or people that really, because if there's something that's deep within yourself that's sort of attracting problematic friendships or problematic connections, this might be a new moon that really pushes you to discover, what's my value? Do my friends value me? Does my community value me, and maybe needing to set a lot of social boundaries or emotional boundaries because of the hard energy to Saturn. So that is your look at the upcoming Libra new moon. As we go into the end of the week, we have Sun square Saturn on the 18th of October. Venus will oppose Neptune as well. So we're sort of rounding out the week, and it's really activating some of these deeper themes that are present in the new moon. Again, Sun square Saturn wants us to set boundaries. It wants us to do our Saturn work. And I've been telling people that we're in the last 2 months of Saturn and Capricorn. So this new moon is really doing that final check-in, this check-in that we're going to have before the beginning of December, when we're going to have our Saturn and Capricorn exit interview, is the best way I can put it. So there's a lot going on this week, and the next 4 weeks, the next lunar month, are going to really push some buttons, or maybe get us to set some healthy boundaries, or to re-honor our commitments, or work on our relationships. So that is your look at the astrology this week. I also wanted to talk quickly about a project that I'm involved in. I aligned with a woman who owns a winery in Napa Valley, along with a very good friend of mine who also sells crystals. And I'm going to be talking about this more over the coming weeks. We're doing this wine and crystal pairing, and we're going to do a virtual event on November 1st, right after the Taurus full moon, where if you get this bottle of wine and you have this crystal, and we'll all get together and we'll talk about the astrology. There'll be a recording for those who can't make the live call, but the crystal we're going to be working with this month is mahogany obsidian, and I think obsidian is a really great energy to work with in 2020, because it really is about keeping us grounded and centered and protected, and kind of protected from all these really intense energies. So I'm going to be sending out some more information about that, talking more about this, but this is kind of the initial teaser. I'm going to put the link in the show notes. I forgot to put the link in the show notes, but there will be a link in the show notes for those watching the replay. And speaking of which, if you are watching the replay, thank you so much. And I hear from you. Some of you are my clients. You say that you watch every week. Some of you, wake up in Australia and listen to me as you're getting ready. I know all of you are around the world, and I really truly appreciate your time and your investment, and really supporting my work, and you share this with your friends, and again, I'm deeply appreciative. So thank you so much for coming every week and letting me know where you live, because like I said, I can't travel right now, so I sort of have to live vicariously through you all, especially those who are in fun, delicious places like Italy, where I would love to be. When all this hopefully is over. That said, you can go to my website, empoweringastrology.com, and get more information about things that I am involved in. You can get your daily astrology content. You can read your October horoscopes. I will be doing a new moon report for this Libra new moon. You can follow me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Sign up for my newsletter. The link is in the show notes. But thank you so much for connecting with me yet again for another live look at the astrology, and we will connect next week. Take care. Bye.